Hey, everybody, good morning and welcome back. Thanks for joining us. If you happen to be tuning in live via that 80s Wrestling the Podcast YouTube page, jump into the comment section, click the link that's pinned to the top. That's how you get into the studio. That's how you get on the air with us. And just a reminder, before joining, turn your cameras off. We do audio callers only. If your camera's on, nobody will see you anyway. Use headphones if possible, and be sure you mute that YouTube live stream in the background. That prevents the echo when you get on the air with us. Once you're in that backstage area, you can still follow and participate in the YouTube comments by clicking the comment section inside our studio app. And please don't forget to follow the page, hit the notification bell to stay up to date on show topics, special guests, and all that good stuff. Last week, we had so much fun exploring some of wrestling's biggest what-ifs. And today we're back with a part 2. We're diving into even more alternate wrestling universe type stuff, asking listeners, asking fans the questions we've debated for decades. What if a major championship had changed hands? What if a legendary wrestler had gone to a different promotion? What if one decision had completely altered the course of wrestling as we know it? And I have the top 5 what-ifs of the golden era. Well, at least the top 5 according to ChatGPT. I'm going to count them down, and we're going to get the callers' reaction to the top 5. All that and more on this live episode of 80s Wrestling the Podcast. My name, Jumpin' Jay. And as of right now, I'm rocking solo inside the studio. Tonight, Wildwood, New Jersey becomes the center of pro wrestling for ISPW as it presents its Legends of Wrestling show. This is one of Tommy Fierro's biggest events of the year. It's a night where generations of fans come together. They meet the legends they grew up watching. They relive unforgettable moments. They witness another incredible chapter of ISPW. He's got some incredible matches on the card tonight. There's autograph sessions with legends. There's photo opportunities. It's going to be a night of unforgettable action inside the ring. It's more than just a wrestling event, folks. It's a celebration of pro wrestling, ISPW, and everything Tommy Fierro worked so hard to bring to the wrestling fans of the East Coast. As far as I know it, he's going to join us at some point. He's probably on the Wildwood Boardwalk down in the New Jersey shore there, meeting and greeting fans, getting ready for the event tonight. So if he joins us, we'll bring him on the air. Otherwise, we're going to jump into it. Again, today is a part 2 from last week's conversation. We're opening up the forbidden door. What would happen if we could talk about some of pro wrestling's biggest what-ifs? We're going to count down the top 5 with the first 5 callers. We'll get your input. Jump into the comments. It's going to be a fun one today, folks. Up first on the Wrestling Collector Slam line, it's time to fly out to the always sunny Chico, California, and touch base with none other than Babyface Brian. Brian, good morning, brother.
Good morning, Jay. How's it going?
Doing very well, sir. I'm excited for today's conversation. As you know, Tommy's other show, ISPW Weekly, that talks all about the independent superstars of pro wrestling, aired its 100th episode last night. I was had the honor of joining Total with Tom to co-host that show, and you gave a lovely voicemail to that show. So I want to thank you personally for that. It was a fitting ending to the 100th episode.
Yeah, definitely. Congratulations to Tom, and it was really nice hearing you back on the show and seeing you back on the show. Great job.
Well, I appreciate the compliment. I will tell you this: it is not like riding a bike. I had a few flubs along the way, but I enjoyed the evening. I'll say that.
Well, it didn't show. You're a hell of a host, both here and when you join Total with Tom, my friend.
Well, thank you, sir. I do appreciate that. We're carrying on last week's conversation, the biggest pro wrestling's biggest what ifs. And since you're the first caller, I would love to get your input on what ChatGPT thinks is the number 5 biggest what if. So I'll get your input on that if you're okay with that, Babyface, and then we'll go into any of yours.
Sounds great.
All right, I'm going to put the graphic on the screen if you're watching on the YouTube page. According to ChatGPT, number 5, the biggest what if of the golden era is, what if Andre the Giant had never retired undefeated? The question is, should Hogan have been the one to end the streak? What would it have meant to Andre's legacy if he never got pinned? After Hogan beat him at WrestleMania III, he was in rough shape. His back was hurting. He kind of slid down the card, and then Other guys were beating him. Other guys were slamming him. He did have a tag team championship run with Haku. But what do you think it would have meant in the world of What If Andre the Giant had beat Hulk Hogan and had never been defeated and retired completely undefeated?
Well, I don't know. This one, I just have a hard time going that direction with the professional and the quality of a wrestler that Andre was. I think that he was so deeply entrenched into his love of pro wrestling and performing, and such a underrated performer. Even in his later years, he was such a great seller in the ring. When he couldn't move well, he still had the facial expressions and was such a um, just his acting capabilities, not only in stuff like Princess Bride, but mainly in the ring. Just his expressions and reactions to stuff. I think that he was deeply entrenched in the traditions of wrestling and would have wanted to go out on, looking up at the lights, and wanted to do his part. So I just can't even like give this one any thought as far as seeing him go out undefeated. The sad thing to me, I guess, is I saw something yesterday where he had gotten beaten by Ultimate Warrior and pinned by Ultimate Warrior 48 times. And so I was always a little, I don't know, it just, those squash matches with Warrior, I know it was an easy night because it was quick matches, but those always bothered me personally, the quick squash matches against Warrior. And I was always rooting for Randy Savage to get a clean win over Andre, but I know that he wasn't happy with the baby oil and that Randy wore, and that for some reason that was the guy he didn't put over cleanly. He had no problem doing it for Hogan, and he had no problem obviously doing it many times to get Ultimate Warrior that push. But I think he would have had to have retired sooner than he did to go out undefeated. Like if he wins that world title, we're not looking at going through an extra few years with Andre holding the belt. So they would have had to have stripped him of the title somehow if they didn't want him to get beaten. And yeah, that one I'm going to throw that one out as kind of a bad answer from ChatGPT personally.
Wow, ChatGPT, it gives you the little disclaimer at the bottom. Check my work because I make mistakes. And this might have been one of them, because correct me if I'm wrong, Babyface, you're kind of the encyclopedia of wrestling here. In all actuality, Andre wasn't even undefeated when he was facing Hogan at WrestleMania 3, correct? That was just kind of a storyline version of Andre's career at that point.
Yeah, I mean, early on, I think he had some losses when he was, Jean Ferret. I'm trying to remember in the late '60s, early '70s. The giant Jean Ferret or whatever it was, his first name. I think he had some losses back then, and then even if he wasn't pinned cleanly, I don't know. It's just kind of like obviously he was slammed by many guys before Hogan slammed him, including Hogan in 1980 in the WWF. So as far as his one loss record, yeah, I think he suffered some defeats. I don't know if he had any pinfalls when the legend had grown, but yeah, I can't see them keeping the title on Andre and having him be. He wasn't a house show worker. He would. Of course, he did it with Ultimate Warrior for many shows, but at the time that he got beat by Hogan at WrestleMania III, he had gone through having some serious back issues, and he didn't wrestle again until Survivor Series after that match at WrestleMania III. And so his schedule is real limited, and they were a house show business. So I just can't see Andre carrying the title and going undefeated. So yeah, this one I'll throw out as bad ChatGPT.
Well, I'm going to take the graphic off the screen, but as I do, you do a terrific Andre impression. Can you give me one no baby oil in Andre's voice as we move on to the next thing?
No baby oil, Randy. No, I'm done with you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Now,
no problem.
You gave us some last week, but do you have any other what ifs from that golden era timeline?
I had a few last week, but the one that I'm stuck on this week, and I think somebody mentioned it, is A few years ago, when I was listening to Bruce Pritchard on his podcast, he talked about the fact that at SummerSlam '88, they had a real chance at bringing Ric Flair in as the special guest of Brother Love, and they thought they were going to sign him. And of course, it ended up being Hacksaw Jim Duggan on that SummerSlam '88 appearance with Brother Love. But when I think about how much things would have changed if Ric Flair had come along at SummerSlam '88 and joined the Federation, you think about they basically kind of closed a chapter on DiBiase and Andre being the Mega Bucks and being teamed up against Hogan and Savage as the Mega Powers. And when they moved to Survivor Series, it was kind of shifted towards Akeem and Big Boss Man and the Twin Towers against the Mega Powers, and basically just going towards that focused goal of Hogan and Savage, splitting up and setting up that WrestleMania 5 main event. But if you get Flair in that picture, you start to wonder if maybe it would have been something similar to when Warrior dropped the title to Sergeant Slaughter at Royal Rumble, setting up Hogan against Slaughter at WrestleMania 7. You kind of wonder if Flair would have been slotted into that top heel spot, and if somehow Randy Savage would have dropped the title to Flair before WrestleMania 5, and they would have set up Hogan versus Flair, which was the dream match for all of us kids reading Pro Wrestling Illustrated back then. If that would have been the main event of WrestleMania 5, is Flair with the title going in against Hogan at WrestleMania 5, and the thing that's weird about it is really there's at that time I can't see two top stars or more than three top stars in the WWF. You had Hogan and Savage, and if you add Flair in that mix, those are really head and shoulders above everybody else. Even DiBiase had slid a little bit further down the card from WrestleMania 4, and Warrior wasn't quite there yet. Of course, he lost the IC title to Rick Rude at WrestleMania 5, but I can't really see Ric Flair in the picture for the IC title. I only see him coming in and going for the world title. So it's just an interesting dynamic of where does that set up? Because I don't see Flair going against Savage and beating Savage at WrestleMania 5 as the match they would have that they would have really been shooting for. I think it would have been Hogan and Flair somehow, and it just leaves an odd man out with Savage at the top of the card there. So things would have just been so different, and Tully and Arn were there at that time. So does it become this? You've got three of the four horsemen with Heenan, with Flair joining up with Heenan possibly, and joining Tully and Arn, and you've also got Rick Rude and Andre and Harley Race as part of the Heenan family. So you've got, potentially multiple WWF horsemen with Flair involved. So to me, that's a real fun one to think about, is how different everything would have been if Ric Flair actually would have made the jump over to WWF at SummerSlam '88, and how differently history would have gone down. And the saddest thing would have been we probably would have lost the Mega Powers exploding in that storyline arc that had been going really since late '87, with when Randy was turning babyface against the Hart Foundation and the Honky Tonk Man, and kind of gravitating towards that Hogan and Savage alliance. So yeah, that's a fun one for me, is what if Ric Flair had jumped to WWF at SummerSlam '88?
It's a lot of fun to think about what it would have meant for the WWF product. My brain's also going, what would it have meant for the WCW product if Flair had jumped at that point? I mean, do the Four Horsemen survive if Flair comes over? I think Ted Turner bought WCW in November of '88. So does he even purchase Is it worth purchasing without Flair as like the lead guy? And then what happens to WCW from that moment on?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that Flair was entrenched in a feud with Lex Luger at Great American Bash and into Starrcade. So I think maybe they would have shifted the title to Lex Luger, and it would have been an even bigger boost to his career. And somebody who knows the booking that goes into it and what would have happened. But I think it would have crowned Lex Luger over in WCW/NWA, and yeah, it's just it's. I said last show too. I think everything kind of happens for a reason, and I think that the Mega Powers exploding ultimately, I would have hated to. I hate to think about losing that storyline in the history of wrestling, but yeah, uh, Flair coming over, it just would have thrown a wrench into so much of what actually went down. And so it's interesting to think about. But I think the best thing that could have happened, as much as I would have loved to have had Hogan and Flair at WrestleMania and the grandest stage of them all as a main event at some point, especially at '88 when they both were coming off such a high point of the '80s right there of being the top dog in each federation. So yeah, fun stuff.
It's a big what if Flair would have came over in '88. That's a fun one. You could probably do a whole show on the trickle down effect of that. So, but I appreciate you bringing it in and kicking off the show, man. That's a great one.
Awesome. Look forward to listening to the other callers, and I thank you and wish Tommy and ISPW all the luck in the world and a successful event in Wildwood. Take care, my friend, and have a great rest of the show.
Thank you. You as well, Babyface Brian. Today we're talking a part 2 of pro wrestling's biggest what ifs. What if this would have happened? What if that would happen? What if this guy would have won? What if this guy would have jumped to the other company? So many what ifs. I've got the top 5 from ChatGPT. We're going to get the caller's reaction to them, and then we're going to hear some of their own. Up next on the Wrestling Collector Slam Line, school is now in session. It's time for Professor Matt. Matt, good morning, brother.
Morning, Jay. How you doing?
I'm doing great, my friend. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you. So first, right off the top, I just want to give a huge congratulations out to Toto with Tom. And all of his accomplishments with ISPW Weekly. Now, I'm not a regular weekly appointment viewer. I catch the clips when I can, but it's been absolutely amazing watching the progression up to 100 episodes, and I'm just so impressed and humbled by the great work that he does there. So I just wanted to mention that, and you obviously are a huge part of that too, Jay.
Well, I'm a very little part of it now. I was able to help. I was honored to help him kick it off 100 episodes ago, but he's been taken since episode 50 to now, and he's done such a tremendous job with it. He's so passionate about it. I absolutely loved getting to sit next to him online last night anyway and watch him do his thing.
Yeah, agreed. So I'm so glad that this became a part 2 because I was not able to call in last week, and I had some really great ideas, and it just scheduling did not work out for me. But here we are. And so I've got a couple of micro examples that I'd like to bring up. And then, of course, the macro ones that I think more people think about. But, one that I think Babyface Brian and you, Jay, will appreciate is, what if LJN and Grand Toys of Canada never stopped producing figures in 1989?
We would have never got, we never switched to Hasbro. We just always stuck with the LJNs. Right. The guys we would have gotten. We would have gotten some
right.
halves of tag teams that they didn't originally produce, for sure.
That's right. You don't get Hasbro, and then conceivably you don't get Jakks, and on and on and on. And we just have decades of 8-inch rubber figure toys, which is right in my wheelhouse and Babyface Brian. And those are the figures that we love and collect. And so I could not bring up that item, that micro item. Another one that I think you'll appreciate, Jay, is, what if Marty Jannetty tackled his demons successfully when the Rockers split up, right? What if he didn't have those on again, off again demon problems? And what if he was able to harness all of that talent professionally and see where his career would go? Because it felt like just right when he was getting a push, he'd get in his own way. And then he'd get another push, and then he'd just, as soon as that gets going, he'd get in his own way. And so what if that never happened? What if he was able to fulfill whatever, professional career could have been? I think is an interesting what if.
Listen, that's a big one in my book, because I'm a huge Marty Jannetty guy. And I've been on the record as saying when they were the Rockers, I had preferred Marty Jannetty. And there's even interviews of Shawn Michaels saying in the early days in the AWA, when they first got to WWF, Marty was better on the mic. Marty was better in the ring. Now, obviously, Shawn Michaels far exceeded Marty's career, but a lot of it had to do, like you pointed out, with his personal demons. So I do wonder if Marty could have stayed healthy, stayed clean, if his career hadn't derailed, could have he gotten to the level of a Shawn Michaels, of a Bret Hart? Would he have been another smaller athletic guy that carried the torch during that new generation time? I think that's a big what if, man.
Yeah. So A couple of the bigger ones that came to mind. I think we all know the story of Vince Jr. purchasing the territory from his father, and the system of payments that he had to meet, these balloon payments. And if any one payment was missed, it would go to Gorilla Monsoon and Arnold Skaaland. What if Vince missed a payment? What if Vince missed a payment and that triggered the clause to turn the territory over to Gorilla Monsoon? That changes everything in my mind. Everything. Because I believe Gorilla Monsoon would have carried out more of the Vince Sr. approach to the territory and to the business, right? And that just has a domino effect of national expansion probably doesn't happen. Does Ted Turner feel the need to compete at the level he felt he wanted to compete with Ted versus Vince if it's not Vince anymore? Does Jim Crockett Promotions become the dominant brand that goes nationwide with the exposure on TBS? Did they just become the number one nationwide? Vince missing one balloon payment could have changed everything in my mind. Everything.
Yeah, I don't think we get WrestleMania. I don't think we get Hulkamania. I don't think we get national expansion, at least not until somebody else comes after Gorilla. I think it would have kept it a territory business for quite a bit longer. And like you said, who knows the trickle-down effect of that?
Yeah. And then to sort of dovetail off of that, if you flip that around 180 and say, okay, when Jim Crockett Promotions was trying to compete, right? And they were, in the mid to late 80s, the number 2 promotion, they were having serious financial trouble. And what happened? Ted Turner bought the company, kept it afloat. What if Vince bought Jim Crockett Promotions instead? What if Vince came in here like he did to all the other promotions and said, here's your bailout. I'm going to buy you, just like, I did all these other, territories. If in 1988, Vince buys Jim Crockett Promotions instead of Ted Turner, I mean, going back to Babyface's call, right? Now you just instantly have Dream Match Central, right? The obvious Hogan Flair, but in 1988, instead of Flair going to WWF, as it was rumored, now you have Vince buying the whole promotion. Wow. I mean, that makes my brain hurt thinking about the possibilities there.
Yeah, and knowing the type of businessman Vince is, if he misses that balloon payment, doesn't get WWF, so he buys the competition instead, he is going to be bound and determined to put WWF out of business. And so that would have been a real interesting scenario.
Great job by the I'm gonna coin him Mr. Fact Checker. The rookie is fact checking me in the chat there. He didn't buy other promotions other than Stampede in Atlanta. He's probably right about that. We'll put one in the green check column for fact checker there. So last item I want to bring up, Jay, is and forgive me if this was brought up last week. I did listen to the episode, but it's been a few days and I can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, let alone a few days ago. That's what happens when you get to be my advanced age. What if Bret Hart just played by the rules and said, no problem, I'll drop the belt clean to Shawn at Survivor Series 97, right? So you don't get the screw job, you likely don't get the Mr. McMahon character, which I think in the history, if you go back and look, that the screw job was such a pivotal event for the industry and for that company, because it set off this chain of events that just wouldn't happen otherwise. I don't think Mr. McMahon character happens. It wasn't happening before. Now there was little sprinklings of things, yes, but it really took off after that screw job. That's when the character took hold, which means you don't really get the Austin McMahon feud, which that we know what that did, right? And how over does the Attitude Era really get without Austin McMahon and Mr. McMahon character? And it was, does WCW end up winning that? Well, like the chain of events that you can unwind back to the screw job, Montreal screw job, which is, there's a lot of opinions on that, but man, that it feels like a point in time, an event that if that doesn't happen, everything is different.
Yeah, it really is, man. Because without the screw job, we don't get the Mr. McMahon character like you pointed out. And then even Brett, instead of leaving kind of upset at the wrestling business, he kind of left feeling, at least he looked like delusioned about the wrestling business. So when he arrives in WCW, you don't get the Bret Hart that we all knew and loved from the WWF. You get somebody who's kind of bitter already and kind of over it. Do we get a better Bret Hart in WCW? And what does that mean for WCW? That's an interesting one. We did not talk about that last week. What if the screw job never happened? Now, are you of the mindset, Matt, that the screw job was legit, like it was what it was, or do you think it was a little bit of a work?
My personal opinion, I've always felt it was a shoot, and primarily because in life there's a phrase: secrets are good between three people, and two of them have to be dead.
That's fair. I've never heard that. That's fair.
I just don't think that in 2026 we'd still be wondering that there's just too many people involved that real information would have come out by now. It just would have happened. I don't think Brett and Vince and Hunter and Sean, whoever was involved in making this a work, I just don't think it would have stayed that tight for this long. So that's my opinion.
You know, the Bret Hart Wrestling with Shadows documentary is so good, and it just happens to be filmed. Part of this event is filmed, and so you get like that perspective of it. And so that always boggles my mind that it was documented, not just on the pay-per-view broadcast, but that Bret Hart had this camera crew following him as well. And I don't know if Vince would have allowed that if it was a shoot. I don't know if he would have allowed that if it was a work. It's one of those things that I believe it was a shoot, but there's some things that make you go, man, it's very interesting how it all went down.
Boy, is that not ripe for conspiracy theory fodder, though? I mean, what are the odds of that happening at that event with that, cataclysmic moment, right? Like that, it's just perfect for conspiracy theory. So, Jay, give me the number 4. I'll give you my thoughts, and then I'll get out of here.
All right, here it is, brother. According to Chat GPT, the number 4 what if from the golden era. I'll put the graphic on the screen if anyone's watching YouTube. What if Ted DiBiase had become WWF champion when Andre gets the belt and he gives it to DiBiase and Jack Tunney rules, no, that's not how it works. We got to vacate that title. What would have happened if the $1 Million Man was allowed to keep that championship? Would it have changed the Mega Power storyline? What would it have meant for WWF? Give me your what if DiBiase became a heel champion.
Well, I don't think it changes a lot long term, but I've always felt that could have been a very plausible path to go down. If DiBiase holds that championship, then the next year is really what's impacted, right? So instead of holding up the title and having the tournament and Macho winning, now you just have DiBiase defending. Maybe he even defends against Macho at WrestleMania 4 and wins that match, right? Okay, that leads up to a you're always building for the next event, right? Maybe that dovetails into a summer program that ultimately leads to SummerSlam, where maybe Macho does then get the rub and gets the title. And maybe they go back and forth for the entire year. How does that impact the Mega Powers? Well, I think what you would do is you would have DiBiase and company continually prevent Macho from winning the belt. Maybe he doesn't win it at SummerSlam. Maybe and Hogan has to come to right the wrongs of all the outside interference of Virgil and Andre, and Macho Man can't get over the hump, and Hogan's here to set things straight. And he does, and maybe then helps Macho win the title, and then you progress and you get to that Mega Power storyline eventually. Maybe it's drawn out a little longer, but I think the premise of $1 Million Man holding that belt at that point in time would have worked. It would have worked. Now, long term, no, but I think for that year, that point in time, DiBiase was so red hot. I stand by the fact that 87, 88 $1 Million Man was one of the best heat-seeking heels ever. I mean, the heat he got for that character at that time was just unreal. And so you can make the argument he didn't need the title, but we're playing fantasy here. So if you give him the title, I think it could have worked for an extended period of time. Would I have had him carry the belt all the way the whole year? No, I think you would have found a way to eventually get it on Macho, but I think it would have worked.
Yeah, when I read that too, I thought the biggest thing it would change is WrestleMania 4. You wouldn't need the tournament. You could just have a heel DiBiase champion defending against Macho Man. But in my opinion, Ted DiBiase is one of the best heels in the history of the World Wrestling Federation. And so did he need the title? Like you said, no. If he would have got it, I don't think it would have changed much because I don't think he would have held it for an extended period of time, like you said. I think just WrestleMania 4 would have been the biggest effect we saw.
Yeah. And so, I'm going to question ChatGPT because the biggest what ifs. I mean, this is a great, the DiBiase question is a great one to have a conversation, but I don't know that it's one of the top 5 biggest what ifs. I'm gonna turn that list over to the callers, and I think the callers have a much better finger on the pulse of what the top 5 might be. These are all interesting, but rookie Edwin, no homework for you. You've earned your gold star. School is out for the summer. Until next time, I'm out.
Professor Matt, ladies and gentlemen, no assignments given in summer school, at least not this week. We're talking about the biggest what ifs, continuation from last week's episode. We're counting down the top 5 according to AI. So far, number 5 and number 4, not that groundbreaking, like Professor Matt pointed out. The ones Matt brought up now, that I think those had much bigger ripple effects to the wrestling industry and what it would mean to today's product. But the top 5 and 4, fun to count down anyway. Coming up next is number 3, and the person that's going to have to tackle that assignment is none other than the rookie, Edwin. Edwin, good morning, brother.
Good morning, Jay. It's always great talking to you every week.
Well, I appreciate you calling in every week, man. Without the callers, this show would be boring. And so we appreciate that you guys follow along.
Well, sometimes I'm pretty boring. So, but other callers definitely, they're maybe more excited than I am. But yeah, like the what if. So, I really was surprised that no one really said this because it really is a kind of monumental what if, and it's a little bit like real, but the Owen Hart harness thing, like that to me probably just long term for their families in the lawsuit that the World Wrestling Federation had. I would probably put that like number 1 without like even me. Like I didn't even put that last week. I think that would probably be number 1.
Yeah, that's first of all, like you said, for his family, his kids, his wife, of course, that's like the biggest what if. Like wrestling doesn't matter compared to someone's life and like someone's family losing their husband and their father. And so I agree, like for the Harts, that it's such a tragedy. It should never have happened. From a wrestling point of view, like Owen had potential to maybe become WWF champion. Like he was such a solid performer. And so from a wrestling standpoint, you wonder what would have happened with his career and where he could have gone professionally.
Yeah, I think, Owen was only 34 years old. He was so young. Because I remember watching him in Stampede Wrestling a decade prior in 89 and 88, because it would come here on Wednesday. So it was like nationally broadcasted. Like I think it was on the same channel that the World Wrestling Federation would eventually be on. But yeah, like he was such a great performer, and being the WWF champion by that point, I don't know, but just his talent was just incomparable, and I would definitely like say that his career and obviously his life had a lot of what ifs. But another one I would probably say too was in 1981 when Hulk Hogan left the World Wrestling Federation and did the Rocky 3 scene with Sylvester Stallone. I really do think that was basically the point where Hulk just became just another type of superstar, because the platform that Rocky set for Hulk Hogan and Mr. T, without Sylvester Stallone casting those 2 guys, I truly don't think the WrestleMania exists. And I don't think Hulk Hogan becomes the star he does. Mr. T absolutely does not become the star he does without that movie, because that movie basically, he had so much charisma. And, obviously the A-Team that followed, he got his own serial cartoon. He was on, Battle of the Network Stars. Like he was so popular. And with Hogan and Mr. T building that, at least promotional relationship with each other, that's what made WrestleMania. It was Mr. T and Hulk Hogan. And it starts with that Rocky movie. And if neither guy gets put in that movie, WrestleMania does not exist.
Yeah, it's interesting. Hogan talks about how the AWA didn't want him to go do that movie. And he said, no, I'm going to do it. And like you said, it gave him national exposure outside of the wrestling industry. And the Rocky movie did such a great job of making Hogan look larger than life. If you go back and look at either the still shots or the actual videos, like he towers over Sylvester Stallone, makes Sylvester Stallone look tiny in comparison. So now if you're telling me, if you have Thunder Lips from Rocky 3, the guy that did that to Sylvester Stallone is wrestling at WrestleMania 1, like it just drew in other people that would have no idea who Hulk Hogan was if he wasn't in that movie.
And not only that, but like if you actually saw, like Stallone posted a picture of that scene, because once again, like Stallone also directed that movie too. So just like shows you how much he worked just to maintain his physique and direct the movie. But Sly put Hogan on a platform, kind of like what they did with Andre when he would cut promos with Vince, because they want him to make him even look bigger, right?
Which is awesome, because if you think a lot of wrestlers, I don't know if everybody knows this, but a lot of wrestlers, if you get a picture with them, some of them will go up on their tippy toes because they want to look bigger than the average person that they're being posed with. And so just from like an ego standpoint, for Sylvester Stallone to understand, the bigger this guy looks, the smaller I look, is better for the story we're telling. And so I love that even though Hogan was already bigger than him, he gave him that a few extra inches to even make it look even more dramatic.
Yeah, and once again, like Eye of the Tiger, where did that come from? Rocky. When they showed that picture or the video of Hogan fighting Stallone, they used that in when Sly was doing press for the movie on Johnny Carson, and Carson just took one look at Hulk and he's like, I want that guy on my show. And then Hogan appears on Carson, and it's just like he's the biggest. Like, what kind of wrestler goes on Johnny Carson? You know what I mean? And then you have Mr. T, right? Like Mr. T, like his entire character or persona was being a tough guy. So like you couldn't just get like any actor. Like Scott Baio cannot play the role of Mr. T at WrestleMania. Like no one's gonna buy that. They wanted someone who was like a Schwarzenegger or a Stallone, and Mr. T was one of those guys, just like a big body guy who people thought was really tough. He had so much charisma, like probably one of the most charismatic people to ever be in Hollywood, and it worked. And I would definitely say that's also a big what if. And I will also just say one last what if, and it's only because I watched a recent house show at Madison Square Garden. This was June 14th, 1987. I just saw it online. I was like, should be interesting. And I just saw Paul Orndorff like go to the ring. And Paul Orndorff, he had like that really like great body, right? And then he takes off his his robe or whatever, and then you could kind of see like his arm was just so small. And I've always wondered, if Paul Orndorff really never had that arm injury, which really did take like a lot out of his career because his physique changed so much in just that 1 year's time after that big house show loop with Hogan. Like, what would have happened? Because he was like the hottest heel, like in one of the biggest heels in the history of wrestling. And if he just never got that injury, because like even Gorilla on commentary literally says, "Oh, I think Orndorff's physique has changed a little bit in the last couple months," and I'm just like, wow, like they're really even acknowledging that he's not the same like guy in terms of his appearance anymore.
Yeah, his arm atrophying like that it's kind of strange that I think of him, and I even think of Lex Luger after his accident. Guys that kind of built their status on their bodies, when you no longer have that, like that's got to be mentally challenging for them to kind of get past it. But yeah, it cut his career much shorter than it would have needed to be had he not had that injury.
Yeah, I just think that like when you would see Orndorff in the ring in like WrestleMania 1 or like when he was facing Hulk in like that's in in during their run, he looked literally like He-Man. Like people see Hulk look like He-Man. No, Paul Orndorff looked like He-Man. He was just ripped. And then you just see like his shoulder blades are much smaller, his shoulders are smaller. He doesn't have the same triceps anymore. And that does affect, especially during that era when you had guys like Bundy and Andre and Hogan and all these like big guys, and Orndorff just looked like he lost like 40 pounds. So I just think if he never got that injury to his arm, I think his run or he could have been booked better, even with the injury. But I just think that like he should have, if that never happened, I think a lot would have changed for him.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was a neck injury that led to some nerve damage, but I think if that never happened, his run would have been different. And then even when he becomes a backstage worker at like WCW, I've heard stories where some guys were more willing to challenge him because of his injury,
Vader.
where he could have maybe held his ground a little different backstage even.
Yeah, him and Vader got into a fight. I think Orndorff won that, and they did like reconcile. Like they even have like a person indie show together where they just kind of like hug each other. But like Paul Orndorff, like this guy played in the NFL. Really tough dude. Like him and Rick Rude were just like two really tough guys. So I think that would be one. Obviously the Hogan one with Mr. T, and obviously Owen Hart as well. So I'll probably see those three.
Those are three great ones. And ironically, you have the number 3 one coming at you from Chat GPT if you're ready for it.
All right, let's see it.
According to AI, the number 3 biggest what if of the golden era is what if Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair headlined WrestleMania 8. Now I think we got Hogan, Sid, and we got Flair Savage
and Randy Mountain and Savage.
Yeah. So what if it was Hogan Flair headlining that WrestleMania? What would that have meant for wrestling at that time?
So I've actually really gone back and looked at like some of the house show cards at that time. And even I think Pritchard said in like one of the documentaries was like, Hogan and Flair just did not draw. And I'm like, okay, like, are you talking about like Hogan didn't draw like he did in like 1986? Okay, that's fair. But Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair, I think they drew like 10,000 people in most arenas. And I think at that time, the WWF was not like the machine it was in the mid 80s with like Mr. T and Hogan and Andre and like their Orndorff, Piper, all those guys were just drawing like sellout after sellout after sellout. At that time, they weren't really drawing that great crowds. And, if you're getting 12,000 people, 10,000 people a night, that's pretty good. However, I watched like a match between like Hogan and Piper versus Flair and Sid. And when Hogan and Flair were in the ring, right, I think the crowd had already seen it a couple of times. But when they tag in Sid, and you see Hogan and Sid, right, because Sid's a big guy, they go nose to nose. That's when everything changed. Like the crowd was just so much more electric when those two were in the ring. And that's what the fans wanted, like this was before, people cared about dream matches and I want to see this guy in this promotion fight this guy in that promotion. It wasn't about that. It was just like, I want to see two big guys who look awesome just collide. And as much as like Ric Flair was like a legend, he was also a smaller guy and people had seen it before. And I think, like Hogan is someone who you're gonna have to like really like beat down and like he's gonna sell a lot for a lot of the match. And people probably may have bought Sid because Sid's like 6'8" or whatever over Flair because Rick was sort of smaller, right? So it's easier to buy Hogan getting beat up by someone like Sid as opposed to Flair. And then also like once again like Sid and Hogan were a more fresh matchup because Flair and Hogan had already been like run through all the towns.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think by WrestleMania 8, maybe they had just missed the opportunity. If Flair would have come over sooner, maybe that 88 like Babyface brought up, then maybe the match would have made more sense. But I think they tested it, like you said, in house shows, and it just wasn't drawing the attention that they had hoped it would. And I do think you're right. I think their styles clash, and I think a big villain like Sid Vicious was a better matchup for Hogan, at least visually.
No. So what I said was like, okay, they actually drew pretty well. But, that was the excuse that Pritchard was saying, like, oh, they didn't draw well. I mean, like, they did draw pretty well. It was like 10,000, 12,000 people. And by the end of like 93 or whatever, they're drawing like 2,000, 3,000 people. So it was drawing fine. It was just, the crowds, when they were booking Piper and Hogan versus Flair and Sid, the crowd was way more hotter for Sid and Hulk than Flair and Hogan because, once again, like, they had already ran it for like 4 or 5 months. So I think, they could have like done it. But I think at the time, once again, like we didn't live in like an internet, a dream matchup type of like age, right? Where we're like we have to get on the biggest stage and the biggest fight. It was just like we want to see like two big guys just tussle. So I would say that's probably the reason. But I've been on for like a long time, so I want to make sure everyone gets on the call. And I really enjoy talking with you guys and love this topic.
Well, thanks for calling in, and we appreciate it, the rookie. I don't know what next week's topic will be, but once we know, we'll put it out there, and then we'll hear from you then.
Hey, can I make a suggestion?
For sure.
Okay, so I really have like been watching the Vault lately, and I saw the Hulk Hogan Rock and Wrestling cartoon, and I know that you guys like have seen it, but like the episodes are pretty like fun and like exciting, and I would love to just do like a Rock and Wrestling episode because I know I talked about Mr. T today, but like I'd love to do like a Rock and Wrestling episode on the cartoon or just like that era. So
for sure,
maybe just
I would love to do that. I would
Awesome.
love to do that. And like you said, I think the WWE Vault on YouTube has a lot of the Rock and Wrestling episodes up there now. So if you're not familiar with it, before next week, you can go on and watch them.
Yeah, yeah, and it doesn't have to be the Rock and Wrestling cartoon, but like the album, the MTV shows, just the music videos with the Goonies. We could just talk about all that.
Tommy will love that because I'm sure you can buy some VHS tapes of Rock and Wrestling at his Wrestling Collect Superstore. So let's do that. Let's do that whole kind of Rock and Wrestling connection era. And we'll talk about the cartoon, the albums, all that fun stuff.
Awesome. I'll be there. Don't worry about it.
Appreciate it, Edwin. Thank you so much, man. All right, some more great what ifs that Edwin brought up. And then next week, we're talking all about that Rock and Wrestling connection era. I actually have a Rock and Wrestling VHS tape down in the basement. I don't have a VCR anymore, so I can't play it, but it's there. And I know it's there, and I sleep good at night knowing it's there. Up next on the Wrestling Collector Slam line, it's time to visit the firehouse. It's time for Firefighter Brian. Brian, good morning, brother.
Good morning, Jay. How are you?
I'm doing very well, sir. How are you doing?
I can't complain. Doing a lot better now that I'm talking to you.
Well, that's very kind of you, sir. It's a continuation of next week, and you have the unfortunate number 2 spot, the second biggest what if of the golden era. We can dive into that, or you can give me some of your own first, however you want to roll.
Well, let's see how unfortunate it is. Let's do it.
All right, here we go. I think we touched a little bit on it last week, but we never really fully dived into what it would mean. The number 2, according to AI, the biggest what if of the golden era. Number 2, what if the Ultimate Warrior had remained the WWF champion? Could have he carried the companies further in the 90s? And if so, what would that have meant for Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels?
That's a very good. Well, you know what? I think what helped Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels was unfortunately the steroid trial. That's what because when that went down, okay, they had to enforce the steroid policy, which forced a lot of guys to sit down and some to even leave the company or take a hiatus. And they had no choice but to rally behind guys like Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Kurt Hennig. You saw more quote unquote normal looking guys, Razor Ramon. But you listen, say what you will about Bob Backlund when he first came back. I mean, it was a snooze fest. I love the guy, but it was a snooze fest. But he was exactly what they needed, okay, at the time. Okay. So that's what I think. Elevate. If Ultimate Warrior didn't lose the title at the Rumble, I think it sounds like they were going to Warrior Hogan main event WrestleMania 7, and Hogan would have maybe won the title, forcing a rubber match or just putting it back on Hogan and dropping the whole thing. Because, apparently Warrior did not draw the way a heavyweight champ you would want your heavyweight champion to draw. And I think that and I liked Warrior. I always liked Warrior. Okay. But unfortunately, his lack of ring knowledge, he relied more on the psychology part of the entertainment part of the sport of the business than actual in ring work. And I think that caught up to him. I think when you're the heavyweight champion, yes, you have to be a good marketable presence, no question. You got to be able to, at the end of the day, you got to sell tickets and make money. But I think if you don't have that in-ring ability, the ring psychology, the way to make them care about you where it counts in the ring, you got nothing. So I think, I think that's a decent. I mean, we've done what, 4 of these already. I could think of 4 better what ifs than the ones we've done.
Well,
But
let me ask you this:
go ahead.
what if the Warrior had the in-ring ability to go along with the marketable look that he already had?
Then who knows? I mean, you know what? Listen, say what you will about him. Okay, on the self-destruction DVD, which I give the WWE a lot of credit for. They've all said that 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 disc shouldn't have been made. It was a mistake. It was unnecessary. And the fact that if he was on it to give his 2 cents about everything, that would have been one thing. That was an attack on him. Okay. However, the last line of the documentary, and I think it was Christian that said, "Say what you will about him. Everybody remembers the Ultimate Warrior. He had a very marketable look. He had the charisma, he had the stage presence, and he had the fucking song." And I've said this before, a song can make you, if you got a good song that matches, especially when it matches the wrestler, you are gold. And he had it. And that if he had the in-ring ability, I think the Ultimate Warrior could have been something really huge. I really do, because he had the other stuff. So I think now, listen, could he have been like a Hogan, Austin, Rock, even Cena? Who knows? I mean, listen, we'll never know. But I think maybe a solid Randy Savage, Kurt Angle, Undertaker, with those guys. And I'm not downgrading those guys are all legends and Hall of Famers. But I mean, I think he may could have been up there with those guys.
I always think, and I know that his weird ranting promos were kind of part of the package. I get that. But I always wonder, what if he could have delivered a more understandable promo and just talked to the audience? I think that would have made a world of difference for that character.
It might have, but honestly, here we are, what, 30, almost 40 years later, and we're still talking about them. We're
Absolutely.
still talking about those promos that made no sense. We're still talking that comic book, which is good for nothing but wiping your ass. We're still talking about the Strucity. So
That's true.
but still, you know what? And here's and let me just tell you a quick personal story. Okay, my brother's wedding, I was the best man. Okay, total with Tom. I hope he listens to this. If not live, then I'll take. Jay, now how long? I want you to guess. How long do you think? And don't joke around. Be honest. And what you legitimately think it is? How long do you think my speech was?
Oh, I would guess 4 or 5 minutes.
13 minutes and 22 seconds.
So that's a long
It
best man speech at a wedding.
I thought it was like 6, 7 minutes. They said, no, B, we timed it. You were on for close to 15 minutes. I'm like, holy jeez. Now, here's the thing. The left side of the room was mostly my brother's people. The the other side of the room was mostly her people. Okay? Now, throughout the wedding, throughout the night, my brother's people were telling me what a great job I did. It was one of the best speeches you ever made. So a few people said to me, I've been to more weddings than I can count or remember. That was the best man speech I have ever heard in my life. You ask her side of the room, not so much. But here's the thing. Every time I saw her family, they would bring it up. My point is, whether they like it or not, doesn't matter. They're talking about it. Say what you will about David Arquette winning the WCW championship, and I got nothing good to say about it. I thought it was a disgrace. You were talking about it. Say what you will about Dennis Rodman, Mike, whoever, you were talking about it. When you're talking about it, that's half the battle right there. You have them talking and it sticks in your mind. So, you know what? He had a way of doing that. And that is why, do I think he's legends and legends? Do I think he's a legend? No. Okay. But he's a legend. He's a wrestling legend, and he should be looked back upon. At least, I understand maybe behind the scenes he's not anybody. He may not be somebody to really look back on fondly, but in front of the camera, he really needs to be looked on fondly and be recognized as somebody who did his job.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we're still talking about. Do you have that best man speech? Is it taped? Is it like a
Oh,
videotape? Have you ever gone back
I
and
wi-
rewatched it, or is it lost to
I
history?
wish to I wish to Christ my brother didn't get a videographer, and one of my guys was there. He videotaped it, but the lighting in the room was so bad. So what he did was he took the audio and he put a picture of me, so you could see it was on YouTube. And unfortunately, I think it was his phone. Something happened with his phone. If I ever find anything of that speech, I will send it to you. But
I would
yeah,
love to
it's
hear it.
well, you and God knows how many other people. But when we get off, Jay, I'll send you some videos from my wedding that I know you're really gonna like. So, all right.
Is that-
So,
I don't know if
so
that's
yeah.
I don't know if that's a promise or a threat. I don't know what that meant.
No. No.
Okay, they're all good.
The,
All right.
Jay, the only thing that sucks about it was I didn't know you guys at the time, or else I would have invited all you
We would
guys.
have all
But
the whole 80s wrestling the podcast community would have been there.
absolutely. We'll listen. We'll talk about the wrestling references of my wedding another time. But because it's almost 11, and I just so my what ifs. Last week you were talking about what if Ted Turner, what if WCW didn't sell or Vince McMahon
Yeah.
didn't buy it or whatever. I think the question with that whole thing is, what if Ted Turner didn't do the AOL Time Warner merge?
Yeah.
Because that's what took his power away. That's what killed the whole thing, really. Because once they did that merge, he didn't have the power he once did. J. Kellner had the power, and he killed the damn thing. So that's what did it. I think that merge was the was the match that started that fire. So I think that's the biggest what if with that. And the crazy thing is that merge wiped out 80% of Ted Turner's personal fortune. Most people would have been dead after that. Ted Turner, after losing 80% of his fortune, was still a billionaire. What does that tell you about Ted Turner?
Lots of money.
Is that
More
is
more
that
money
not
than I
crazy?
could imagine.
Why do you think he was married to Jane Fonda in her prime? Say what you will about Hanoi Jane or any of that shit. Jane Fonda was, excuse my language, one hot piece of ass. Why do you think those workout tapes sold like hotcakes? So anywho, now with so yeah, somebody asked early on, what if Bret Hart had cooperated? I think the question is, what if WCW never went to Bret? What if Bret leaving WWF was a non-issue? He was WWF for life. I think that might have made things. Yeah, granted, you might not have gotten Austin McMahon. You wouldn't have had the Montreal screw job. You wouldn't have had. But what would that have done? Would you have had a longer Bret Austin feud? What would have that have done for Bret and Shawn, who didn't get along to begin with? Would you have gotten Bret Rock? That's a lot. And as far as the screw job goes, what if the Wendy Richter incident hadn't happened years prior? That was the precursor to the Montreal screw job. Nobody ever talks about that, and I'm glad in the McMahon documentary they brought that up. They brought that up as the blueprint for Montreal.
The Bret Hart never leaving, the screwdriver, that's very interesting. That we could do a whole show on what if Vince honored Bret's contract and he stayed that whole time.
Yeah, I mean, we already got next week's topic, but yeah, that's something to put on the back burner. That would be interesting, no question. I'll just say two more, and they kind of coincide with
You
Brett
got to
not
go
leaving.
fast because I got Jason hanging on the line for the number one spot.
Okay, so I'll just say, what if Shawn never got hurt in '98, having to retire for 4 years? And what if Austin never got hurt, never broke his neck
Oh,
with the Owen pile driver?
yep.
What would that have done? And you know what? Listen, we'll do a part 3 at some point.
I
But
love it.
so that's what we'll do. All right, listen, Jay. No, thank you. I don't
Hey,
want
thank
to
you,
keep
brother.
guys holding any more than they already have. Have a good weekend, everybody. Best of luck to everybody at ISPW. God bless.
Thank you so much. That's Firefighter Brian. Yeah, when you go down the rabbit trail of what ifs, man, we could probably do part 3, part 4, part 5, because there's so much good stuff and how different wrestling could be if just one little thing threw us into an alternate timeline. It's time to hear the number one, according to ChatGPT anyway, the number one golden era what if. And the gentleman in line to take it is the world's most dangerous caller. It's time for Jason. Jason, good morning, brother.
Good morning. How you doing, Jumpin' Jay?
I'm doing fantastic, brother. Thank you for hanging on so long for this hot tag to hear the number one what if.
Brian took up half the Fire Brian took up half the show as usual.
But he is.
And-
I love his voice, and he's got some good stuff to talk about. But somebody in the comments last week said his least favorite punctuation is a period, which I thought was funny.
I mean, one other question is Tommy in the closet with Tommy Sheik?
Listen, I'll let you ask him that next week. But he did text me and say that the Wildwood Convention Center needed him to do a last-second walkthrough of the facility to make sure that everything is set for tonight. So that's what he's busy doing. So we'll connect with him next week. But I'll let you be the one to ask him that question.
I think he got kind of pissed at me last week. I told him to kick Tommy's ass. But I don't think.
All right, I'm gonna put the number one AI generated what if. I want your opinion on that, and then you can let me know if you have any others. But according to ChatGPT, the biggest what if of the golden era is what if the mega powers never exploded? How long does Savage keep the championship? Does Elizabeth stay with Savage? Who becomes the top heel in the company of Savage remains babyface? What happens for WrestleMania 5? So the biggest what if, according to ChatGPT, Jason, what if the mega powers stay together?
That's stupid. Just my honest opinion. I mean, come on. You know, eventually they had to explode. It was inevitable for that to explode.
That's the reason it was built in the first place, I think.
Yeah, it was built it was going to explode eventually. Somebody had to turn heel. It was going to be Savage, of course. But yeah, Elizabeth's going to stay with him, obviously. Does his championship reign last longer? Probably so, because they were not good at putting heels as champion back then.
So then, what happens if Savage stays champion through WrestleMania 5? If he doesn't turn heel, what happens?
I don't know where they come up with this one at, but that's dumb. But who's? To answer the question, I'll go on it. Who's the top heel challenging?
Yeah, is it DiBiase?
Who at this time? That's who him. I don't know. Rick Rude, maybe. There's just. Maybe Mr. Perfect.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jason. The guys in the comments are saying they love your response. That's exactly what it should be. That was stupid. The mega powers were created so that they would explode.
That's what the whole. I'm sure when the creative team put that together, eventually we're going to have this explode, and we're going to have us a WrestleMania 5 main event with Hogan versus Savage.
All right, let me see. Do you have a better what if? Let's end the show on a better what if than what AI generated. I guess the humans, at least for now, are still in control of the world. Give me a better what if.
Well, I will have to go with what Firefighter Brian said, talking about if Brett would have stayed with the company. Do we have at WrestleMania? We had WrestleMania 13, Austin versus Brett as a submission match, but if Brett stays at WrestleMania 14, do we have Austin versus Brett and Austin wins the title from Brett instead of Sean.
I'm sorry, you gotta give me that one more again. Total Tom invaded the studio here and he started posting stuff in the comments I had to delete. You gotta give me that one more time so I give you my full attention.
Well, like I said, I mean, what if Brett would have stayed? And Brett would have stayed. And of course, we had WrestleMania 13, Brett versus Austin. But at WrestleMania 14, Brett versus Austin again. And that Austin wins the belt from Brett instead of Sean.
Yeah. This goes back to the last caller said, what if Brett would have stayed? And I think that would have dramatically shifted the WWF experience in that Attitude Era.
I mean, him going to WCW, they dropped the ball with him.
And he didn't want to go there. You could tell he wasn't the same Bret Hart that we knew and loved.
I mean, another what if? What if Hogan would have done business the right way and let Sting beat him in the middle of the ring 1, 2, 3 instead of that crappy finish we got to begin with?
Yeah, that was an odd finish. That was a kind of a cluster.
It's Hogan playing. It was Hogan playing his political card to get what he wanted.
That was a cluster of a match.
I mean,
Jason, are you familiar with the Rock and Wrestling cartoon that we're going to be talking about next week?
I remember watching it as a kid.
You're going to have to jump onto YouTube and watch some of the episodes. I'm going to jump on and watch some episodes. I think it could be a fun episode next week. I just got to brush up a little bit.
But we're basically going to go over the whole rock and wrestling era, right?
Correct. Yes, sir.
I mean, because I remember having the Pile Driver album the wrestling album.
Yep.
And I'll say what I'm going to say next week about that.
I look forward to it.
Have you guys ever done a topic? Maybe down. Yeah, of course we got to talk next week. A topic of wrestling dream matches.
I don't think we've ever done the dream match episode. That's another one. We should book that for the week after next.
There's lots of dream matches, and my number one, again, if we do that, I'll save it for that show. But
save
I have
that show.
Yeah,
I think it's probably Tommy Sheik versus Jason is my guess, but we'll wait 2 weeks to find out.
Or maybe just Tommy. We don't know yet.
Just straight Tommy. With Tommy Sheik as the special ref. I would love to see that.
He could be a special guest referee and do like Earl Hebner did Brett at Survivor Series.
There you go. I love it. Jason, thank you so much for calling in today.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. I'll see you next week.
Sounds good. A little distracted there during his call because Total with Tom snuck into the backstage area and was wreaking havoc. Total with Tom, can you hear me? Total with Tom, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Dude, you come into the studio, start wreaking havoc in the comment section. What's going on?
Well, I'm down here in Wildwood, New Jersey. I have very little time to speak with you. And I have someone very important with me right now who wants to talk to the audience of 80s Wrestling, the podcast. I think you know who I'm talking about.
Who do you have with you? Let the listeners know.
Mr. USA himself, Tony Atlas.
How you doing?
Tony Atlas. Hello, sir. Welcome to 80s Wrestling, the podcast. How are you?
Well, I'm sitting there listening to your broadcast. Vince McMahon made this statement. Ted Turner lost because he was in the wrestling business. I won because I'm in the entertainment business. You see, wrestling disappeared around the mid-90s. Because the reason people would say, Tony, you was wrestling when it was for real. Well, the reason for that, most of the match, what we did were for real. Just like when we hit somebody with a chair, we try to bend that chair all the way around to your ear. I hit Gene Anderson one time, and Gene Anderson looked at me and said, kid, with them big arms, is that as hard as you can hit? Hit me. So I hit him as hard as I could. Yeah, that's pretty good. You're learning. You see the difference?
Let me ask you this, Tony.
See, my job was to make the people believe in what I'm doing. Today, wrestler is just doing it for entertainment. Picture this in your head. Go and talk about ECW. I could get a 12-year-old kid, get a baseball bat, wrap it in barbed wire, and hit you with it. What would be the results of that? A
I would.
12-year-old kid with a baseball bat hit you. What would be the result of that? Wrapped in
I,
barbed wire.
I don't want to be hit with a barbed wire bat from anybody.
Exactly. But they was doing that and wanted the people to believe it. That's why people, us old timers did not like about the new WWE and all this stuff. Cause they took all the real listeners. And another thing that back in the older days, if you could not beat me in real life, I would not put you over in the ring. The reason for that, what if I put you over, let you win, you go out to the local bar and get your butt kicked? That would kill the business. They would never put the belt on anybody that they didn't felt could handle themselves in a real fight. Like if you got a fight with Harley Race, you're gonna get your ass whooped. You got in the fight with most of the champions back in the old day, Bruno Sammartino. These guys were legitimate. One of the things that I hate people to do, and you can watch all the tape, I hate for anybody to assist me on my press slam. I want the people to see that I did that. I had a 650 bench. I had a 425-pound clean and jerk. I had an 800-pound squat. I didn't need your help. So that's why Tony Atlas press slam meant so much. Everybody else did it didn't mean nothing because the people could see the guy pushing off the shoulder. They could see that. They're not blind. Now, if you do that move in front of Stevie Wonder, yes, it's okay. But unfortunately, the order is not Stevie Wonder. They could see. If I'm right there with you and I give you, look at Ric Flair, when they put him in the ring, they took him out of the ring because he was hitting too hard. They already no right to fight that old man. He's hurting me out there. See, our job was to make the people believe that what we were doing for real. So the way to do it was kind of like drug dealers. We gave you the real stuff at the beginning of the match. And then once the people got involved in the match, then we would do the entertainment stuff. The entertainment was always towards the end, if you know the old man. We start off wrestling. Now they start off to do everything but wrestling. You hadn't seen a WWF wrestling match since, what was the guy that commit suicide there? He was the last wrestler that Vince had. Benoit? Chris Benoit. Nobody wrestle no more. When have you seen a wrestling hope? They all what we call chopping meat. Chopping meat. Kicks, punches, then high spots. No wrestling. And the old town would go nuts because we advertising wrestling. Y'all talking about wrestling, but when they go there, they see everything but wrestling. It's kind of like having a sign that say fried chicken. So you go in to get a piece of chicken, they got everything but chicken. That's why, but it's good for me because it keeps me alive. Because people remember when wrestling were wrestling. The guys were legitimate. Terry Funk became famous not for what he did in the ring, for what he did in the bar. He would go in the bar and beat everybody up. Beat up everybody in the bar. Wait, get on the newspaper, they arrest him, the promoter come and get Terry out of jail. We go back to that town, the building sold out. I would go to a gym. I would say, who got the best bench press in this gym? They would tell me, outdo them. Next thing you know, all the guys that talk, hey, we had this wrestler come in, and he just bench pressed 500 pounds like it was nothing. Oh, really? Yeah, he's wrestling. Let's go see this guy. We promoted ourselves. That's why the promoter found out I was doing this in the gym, and then they started having me to do it on TV, doing 500 pounds. Well, the people said, man, I got to go see a guy that could do that much weight. That was my drawing, my bench press draw. My press slam was my draw. You understand what I'm saying? Our job was to make the people believe. because we had this stigma about us in order that wrestling was fake. So our job was to prove that it wasn't. Like Jesse Van Tour said one time, another guy do a flip, land on 3 mats, and they call him an athlete. He said, I get up on the top rope, I fall off on a quick floor, and they call me fake. That's why our matches look different than the matches today, because we did it the way it was supposed to be done. There was no showmanship. I listened to you talk about all these guys. I even had you mention Brett. See what Brett did. I love Brett to death, and I'm not knocking him. I love him to death. But there was a code in this business. They sat and watched the incident between Brett and Vince. And the way they said, if he do that to Vince, he may one day do that to us. Telephone, telegraph, telewrestler. When you leave in a territory, the idea was to pass the torch. Is that why they were scared to put the belt on what we call shooters? A bunch of shooters. Do you know the match with Bob Backlund? You know the Sheik never beat him? Because the Backlund did not want Hogan to have the belt. Backlund was what we call a shooter. He was a legitimate wrestler. So he did not want to drop the belt to somebody he felt he could in real life. That's what the old school mentality. So what happened was they threw in the towel. Now you name one match in the history of wrestling where the wrestler lost by throwing in the towel. But they was afraid that the Sheik could not beat Backlund. And they would screw up their plans to put the belt on Hogan. They told the Sheik that if, who was it, Vern Gagne, told the Sheik, if you break Hogan's leg, I will pay you X number of dollars. Sheik was smart. He told Vince Jr. about it. So Vince said, Sheik, if you don't do it, I give you a lifetime contract. So he took care for the rest of his life because the Sheik did not break Hogan's leg. Another guy, Eddie Graham. If you mess up with him, he put a guy in the ring with you to break something. So if you could defend yourself in the ring, them guys will not let you do nothing to them. You have to take what you want. Like Greg Valentine. Greg never give you nothing. He was just like his dad. You have to take it. And if you wasn't tough enough to make him sell, he ain't gonna sell for you because you're a wuss. We didn't put over a wuss because we was afraid they'd go somewhere and get their ass kicked. You understand the difference between the wrestlers?
Well, I'm getting it. I'm getting it. And
Yeah, when you saw them guys on the older days, the last thing you want to do was fight that guy. You just knew by looking at him that he was a tough, like Harley Race. He didn't have all them big muscles. But when you meet him, you say, man, I don't want to mess with this guy. You meet guys now, you're not afraid of them. Why? Because they don't look hard. It's kind of like when they did that Hercules movie on TV. They had guys like Steve Reeves and Lou Ferrigno, all them guys to play Hercules. Then they get some other little skinny guy because he got long hair and play Hercules. Well, the funniest looking thing I've seen in my life. You always have to look the part. Because what the people see on TV, they expect to see in public. And in the old days, we had territory, which means we stayed at the same hotels and the fans knew where we stayed at. We travel up and down, and we was among the fans. That just block the fans from the wrestlers. Because he knows that, like in Louisiana, the old timer would tell a wrestler, hey, if you want some of this, get in the ring. Well, hell, in Louisiana, brother, back in the older days, you have 10 people standing there. So if you can't fight, what's going to happen to you? What do you think going to happen to you if you can't fight?
well, you're gonna get beat bad, brother.
What just happened with this guy on there when he got that young kid, MMA fighter?
Conor McGregor?
What's his name? Rampage's son.
Oh, right. Yeah.
What happened to that wrestler?
Yeah. He got beat.
You remember that?
Rampage Jackson's son?
Yeah, Rampage Jackson's son beat up a guy down at the Samoan thing there in Florida. It was all over the internet.
Yep. Nope. You're right.
See, that would have never happened in my day. Never. Because they taught us how to do it for real first, just in case you got into a fight. I wrestled for 3 months before they smartened me up. Let me tell you this quick story. I was wrestling in Anderson, South Carolina, 1975. And my tag team partner was Bob Breggers. Bob Breggers was a former MFL football player. He was in that plane crash where Johnny Valentine got injured, with Johnny Valentine, Ric Flair, and the Crockett. And they was in the plane crash in Wilmington, I think Wilmington, North Carolina, or South Carolina. But anyway, every time I got in the ring, they would shoot with me. You know what shoot is, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, they would shoot with me. They wouldn't work with me because I only been in the business for a month. They was afraid that I may quit the business and go as smart than everybody else. So that's why they did it that way. So anyway, every time I got in the ring, they shoot with me. And Bob Breggers get in the ring and they fly over the ring. For wait a minute now, this guy about 230 pounds. I'm 265 pounds, bench pressing over 500 pounds. How come I can't do what he do? So Breggers them, they kept working with it and said, oh, Tony, you got to learn to love it. Love it. It's love it. Love it. So finally, this match in Anderson, I got Art Nelson in a headlock. Now, you got to excuse my language, but this is the 70s, okay? You could beat what I say, but I got to say it the way he said it. So I wouldn't let go. I squeezed his head and squeezed it and squeezed it. He was turning blue. Found the referee, he got close enough to his partner where he could tag out to the Blue Scorpion. So he tagged out the Blue Scorpion, and then the referee told me, tag out and let your opponent have some. So they tagged Bob Breggers back in the ring. Well, anyway, I didn't ring that day. They wouldn't let me back in the ring. I'm walking back to the dressing room, and I hear Art Nelson tell George Scott, who was the booker of Charlotte, North Carolina at the time, just what he said. I want you to smart that damn nigga to me. I'm going to blow his brains out. He had a 45 in his hand. He was going to shoot me. So I go back to the dressing room. George Scott said, come, I need to talk to you. So he pulled me over to the side. He said, Tony, tomorrow we got to teach you to work. You're too strong not to work. And I said, I don't want to work. I want to be a wrestler. You understand? I thought you want to put me to, I thought you were going to put me to work, like mopping the floors or sweeping the floor or putting up the ring or something. I didn't want to work. I said, I want to be a wrestler. I know what the word work means. They didn't, these guys now, they smarten them up before they get in the ring. We believe you can't do something for real and make it look real if you've never done real. How can you imitate something you never did? You've never been in a fist fight the day of your life you're in the ring trying to pretend to be a fighter. How in the hell is that going to happen? That's why they don't have legends anymore. Undertaker, I would say, is the last wrestler. Why do you think this old man go out and outdo all them kids? He know how to do it. Because what he does look real. Because he done it for real. See, they would teach you how to do it the real way first. Then you can act it out because you know how to do it. Like if you never shot a basketball a day in your life, and then somebody give you a basketball and say, go shoot basketball. It's not going to look real because you don't know how real look. You never did it for real, so how you going to know how to do it? You follow me, son? That's what have changed in the business. It became entertainment. It's not wrestling no more. You see what I'm saying?
I agree with you 100%. I think they pulled the curtain way too far back. Even us
Yeah,
fans would like it to go back.
And they put a lot of people in the ring that shouldn't be in the ring. That's why Vince keep them separated. I remember before Chief J. Strongbow passed away, this is what Chief said to me. He saw guys walking the dressing room. He said, why they let all these marks in here? I said, Chief, they wrestlers. He said, boy, they shrunk a lot. You remember like CM Punk in my day, he'd be the light heavyweight champion. How can you call yourself a heavyweight? Picture this. I knew that what I didn't like, I saw the Big Show, 500 pounds, take the stunner from from Stone Cold Steve Austin. Imagine Vince asking Andre to do that. Imagine Andre doing that. You can't. Because Andre said, it's not believable. The people ain't going to believe you could do that to the jank. And if, in fact, you can't do that to the jank. You understand? He wouldn't do that. He would that for John Studd because he knew that it don't look right. Like, well, I managed Mark Henry. Now, Fit Finley is a tough guy. Jeff Hardy is a tough guy. But Jeff weighs about, at that time, maybe about 215. Henry is 430 pounds, the world's strongest man, and he can't beat a man, 200-pound man. He couldn't beat Hogswaller. Now, how you going to be the world's strongest freaking man that can't beat a midget? How in the hell possible? They had me to go there and put over Hogswaller. Who's going to believe that? They don't want it to look real. Vince told me out of his own mouth, Tony, we don't do it that way no more. We want it to be entertainment, not wrestling. Vince tell you himself, ask him. There's no more wrestling. Y'all keep saying wrestling. It don't exist no more. Wrestling do not exist anymore. It's gone. Them days gone. The days of the wrestling gone. It's sports entertainment now. At the wrestling, I took my wife to the match. She was in her 50s. It was an independent show. I said, what do you think of the show? She said, hell, I could whoop half of them guys. They had a bunch of little scraggly-ass looking kids coming up with little bucket whoop arms and soft polish, trying to get the people to follow. See, people in America, we want to believe in something. But it's the same thing with movies. A lot of these movies, it's no believability. I'll give you a personal example. Go to a movie, right? A guy come out with an AR-15. He shoot up the place, hit nobody. Another guy pull out a little dangerous, shoot him, he gone. One shot. How the hell you gonna go into a bathroom with an AR-15 and unload it and hit nothing? How you gonna do that? That's today's wrestling, unfortunately. They went too much with the yeah. And you got to promote. When people see wrestlers, they want to see something that they say, "Oh man, I wouldn't." I'm 72 years old, and people. I just left the gym. People say, "Oh man, I wouldn't get in the ring with you." I walk into the ring. You know what people tell my opponent? Tony Atlas going to kick your ass. Now, what in life where two wrestlers get in the ring, one is 25, the other is 75, and the people believe the 75-year-old going to win? How in the hell that possible?
Well, when that 70-year-old is Tony Atlas, it's believable.
Yeah, but it's not the point. The point is, I faced people in my younger days, and when I was with Harley Race, they didn't say that, and I was bigger and stronger. They didn't say that with Larry the Axe Henry. You see my point? They didn't say that with Ric Flair. And I was bigger and stronger. They thought it was going to be a contest. They didn't know who was going to win between me and Ric Flair. They didn't know who was going to win between me and another opponent. But they do, because it's not the same opponents. I don't face the same opponents. They have made the business so that anybody could become one. All you need to become a professional wrestler today, unfortunately, is a pair of trunks and the money to go to a wrestling school. And you're a wrestler. You don't have to have an amateur background. Most wrestlers know we all had an amateur background. I had an amateur background. Everybody I wrestled had an amateur or professional, some type of combat background. Like Mr. Fuji, people don't know, he was a 9th degree black belt. Abdullah the Butcher took martial arts when he went to Japan. He took classes in martial arts. You go to Japan, you had to be tough because they would just chew you up in the ring. The Japanese wrestler would give you nothing. And if you can't hold yourself in the ring against your opponent. The only thing that your opponent had to do in Japan is do what the promoter said to win and lose. But during the match, they would kick the crap out of you if you can't defend yourself. If they have to lose, they would lay down and they would lay down for you at the end. But during the match, they would beat you halfway to death, and then they would tell the promoter, he's a wuss, get rid of him. Because we were afraid that you go out and get in a real fight and get your ass whooped. That was our biggest fear in the olden days, that we're going to put over a guy. See, the champion, when you put a belt on somebody, what you telling the fans, this is the best we have. Now look at all these guys that want to be wrestlers. Have they thought what would happen if they walk out that ring one day after winning their championship and some guy in order say, hey, I can whoop your ass, and just beat your champion, beat the crap out your champion right there in front of you? How that make the rest of the wrestler look? How that make the company look? That you got a champion that can't whoop his way out of a wet paper bag. Make any sense to you?
It makes perfect sense, Tony Atlas.
See, the guys that trained me, they all, I broke in the 70s. So the guys that trained me came out of the 50s and 60s. I was trained by Greg Valentine's father. I worked out with, you talk about Randy Savage, where I worked against his dad, Angelo Parker. When I first met Randy, he was 16 years old, wrestling him and Lenny out in Amarillo. So when we, like Hogan, when he first broke in, he was a big guy and everything, but they felt that he had no wrestling background, that they tried to break his leg down in Florida. Because they were afraid that some promoter would put the belt on this great big guy that they didn't know that could handle himself and go out in the bar and get his ass whooped. We was always afraid of losing a real fight. That's why they taught us how to shoot and how to maim somebody. You could beat him. If you can't beat him, they say, bite his ear off. Like Magdal Vachon, one time a guy tried to pick a fight with Magdal Vachon. He was drunk and all drugged out. And so Magdal grabbed him, ripped his shirt open, and ripped his shirt open and bit his nipple off and spit him in his face. And then he said, come on, sea sucker, show me what you got. The guy looked down and saw this big plug that this guy took out of his freaking chest out the door. He didn't want to fight. But then when Mad Dog came back, nobody wanted to fight Mad Dog. They said, oh, don't mess with that Mad Dog. Well, look at what Hawk Cool did. Got in a fight with a guy, he kicked him in the chin and ripped his eyeballs out. These guys will rip your eyeballs out before they lose a fight. You could lose a fight to another wrestler, but you could not lose a fight to a fan. So they made pretty sure that the guy they put that title on not only could defend himself in the ring, but could defend himself outside of the ring. It wasn't about entertainment then. But then since Vince got beat up by Bret, he didn't want wrestling around no more because Bret beat him up. So that's another thing Bret did to the Vince. Vince got scared of wrestlers. That's why I was surprised he brought Brock Lesnar in, because he was always afraid of guys like that. Because these guys, they will whoop you. If a promoter tried to stiff their pay, they would beat you up. Eddie Graham kept shooters around, and he would have shooters to take guys in the ring and just beat them up like the Briscoes. The Briscoes were the Jerry and Briscoe. They were shooters. They would be the bar root. That's why he kept all these shooters around. So the guy got smart. They said, doing the ring, Bill Watts. Found out that if like me and you had a beef, if I didn't like you, Bill Watts said, oh man, I got to book that match. They used to call it a grudge match. And me and you would wrestle. And then Bill said, look, I want y'all to fight, but after you get through, I don't want to hear about it no more. So sometimes the fights was in the dressing room. Sometimes the fights broke up a fight between Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Matt Bourne. Matt Bourne loved to fight. He would pick a fight with anybody. But for some reason, he didn't like Hacksaw. I don't know why. I like Hacksaw. But Matt Bourne didn't like him. And every time they put them together, it was not a match. It was a fight. It was a fight. Matt gonna fight him. As big as Hacksaw was, Matt Bourne wanted him. That's why he wanted him. So I'm going to whoop his ass. I don't like him. And the promoter loved it. We used to call them grudge matches.
You can end anytime you
You know? So you see why I see the business different, because it's not the same business.
It is not the same business. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. USA Tony Atlas is appearing tonight at the Wildwood Convention Center for ISPW as he defends the ISPW Tri-State Championship. Tony, thank you so much for joining us. For all the callers today, thank you so much for calling in and giving us your biggest what-ifs of the golden era. Catch you next week as we talk about the Rock and Wrestling Collection on 80s Wrestling, the podcast.